All right, what's up? AP history teachers on a Saturday in August. So if you can hear us, if you can see us, just in the chat, hit tell us who you are, where you're from. Chat should be public. Hopefully there's
people in here.
There definitely are a lot of people in here. There you guys are.
There we go.
All right, cool. Chris Clancy, Nancy, Steve. Awesome. Yeah, we got a hopping session today for sure. All right, so as you guys are just kind of introducing yourself, we're going to talk about the short answer question today. And I think the short answer question is one of those like parts of the exam that gets like overlooked because it's short, right? But like there's a lot of value in it for kids. And so this is a good one to like really focus on in your year because I think it's like relatively like easy compared to like the DBQ or the LAQ to get the points. So that's what we're going to cut through today for sure. So also one other question for you guys, if you could hit a number in the chat of how long have you been teaching? How long have you been teaching AP history? So if this is your first year, you can just say 0. All right, so we've got some vets in here, 2016. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, you guys are quick. Chat's going quick. All right, so I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Amanda. I taught AP World for 5 years, and I'm the founder of Fiveable. At my school, I don't know. I really enjoyed teaching AP World. I had 2 sections of it in the last year. And Heather, take it away.
Hi, I've also been teaching AP World for quite a while. I worked with Amanda in Oakland, and so I've been doing AP World for 6 years, took on AP Human Geo 2 years ago also. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today and talk about the SAQ.
Dope. Okay, so we'll share our emails and stuff and Twitter later again. So if you guys have any other questions after the session, you can hit us up. All right, so let's run through a little agenda. Heather, will you kind of run through this?
Yeah, sure. So it looks like we got the introductions out of the way. We wanted to share what the SAQ format is, the types of questions that students will see as part of the SAQ, then sort of move into specific strategies for answering an SAQ, and then go through some practice, have you guys ask questions, and then share how you could use SAQs in your classroom, different strategies for how to implement student practice in your own classrooms.
Awesome. Okay, and if you guys have any questions as we go, just drop them in the chat. I'm going to be watching that and making sure that we kind of loop those in and making sure we get those answered. All right. Okay, so first, just about the SAQ. So go ahead, Heather.
So on the AP exam, as many of you with experience will know, there are 3 SAQs, and they each require both skills and content. And they assess at least one of the thematic learning objectives. So students have 3 questions, they have 40 minutes, and this portion of the exam is worth 20% of the overall score. So of the 3 questions, they each kind of assess a different skill or a different part of the content. So question 1 has a secondary source as an excerpt, and that can be an image, a graph, map, or text. From time periods 3 through 6. So there is a stimulus as part of question 1 from time period 3 through 6. Question 2 is a primary source stimulus and will require either CCOT or comparison in the response. So students will have to draw from their previous knowledge of what they learned in class along with the primary source that they're given. And then the third question does not have a stimulus, and students are given 2 choices. One question will be from time periods 1 through 3, and the other from time periods 4 through 6. So those are how the questions are kind of broken down. Each question has 3 parts where each part is worth 1 point. So we can get more into this later, but when students answer those questions, they are advised to label them A, B, and C. It makes it much easier for the readers, and also to make sure that the student has answered each part of what the question's asking. So each part is scored separately. And then there is a space limit. So students get a box on one page of paper to answer all parts of each question. So being direct, to the point, concise is really important when answering SAQs.
Yeah. So I'm going to just post a quick poll just to see how comfortable you guys are with teaching the SAQs, just so we know kind of where we're at. Since it seems like a lot of you guys have experience, so we'll tailor this to where you guys are at. And so while you guys answer that, let's go into some of the strategies. Well, it looks like we have most of you answered it already. So it seems like of this,
In the middle.
yeah. All right. So it seems like most of you guys are pretty comfortable. Some really great. So if you feel really great, definitely chime in if you have suggestions.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are feeling like a little or not at all, just ask away when we hit something that you're not sure. So goal is to get all of our students this year passing these exams. All right, hit it.
So I think there's a specific strategy that we'll talk about to answer SAQs that those of you with experience have probably heard of. But first, just to clarify, a solid response to an SAQ question has kind of three main things it needs to do. So you need to directly answer the prompt very clearly, and use specific facts and content-specific vocabulary. So recalling specific terms, dates, names of people, identify specific historical evidence to support your answer. And then thirdly, explain that thoroughly. You want to assume that even though you know the reader has information, you want to make it clear so there's no guessing, so you're not assuming what the student knows, but they've actually written it down in front of you.
So get to the point.
Yeah, yeah. Because you only have limited amount.
And say what you mean so that you can't assume that the reader is gonna like fill in the gaps. Just like get there. Yeah, Cheryl, ACE. That's exactly what we're gonna get into.
Yes,
for sure.
Exactly.
So some tips before we get into ACE. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So as far as answering the question, some tips to tell your students, they want to make sure to reword the prompt in the answer. That has two benefits. One, it makes it really clear to the reader what question is being answered, and what their answer is. And then secondly, it ensures that students stay on topic, so that they're rewording what the question's asking. So hopefully they're answering it directly. You want to also make sure that you, as the student, are addressing the historical thinking skill used. So like if the question is about comparison, make sure you use words like similarly or on the other hand or like, likewise, to make it really clear what skill you are using. If there is a stimulus, you have to refer to that in your answer. I scored the SAQ 2 years ago, and students that didn't refer to the stimulus, even if they had the correct answer, did not earn the point. So it's very important that if they give you some kind of stimulus, that the student refers to it. They don't have to describe it again. The reader knows that the student is referencing what that stimulus was. I talked about historical evidence before. So if they say vague things that could apply to any time period or any place, that's not enough. They have to have specific relevant names, dates, so it's clear that they know what they're answering. Also, previously stated, make sure that the ideas are all stated clearly, that there's no room for question, that the reader doesn't have to fill in the gaps or assume what the kid knows. And then lastly, you have to write complete sentences. So bullet points, outlines, diagrams are not going to be counted as an answer. So make sure that they have complete sentences.
Okay, so to sum up, essentially, look at what the question is saying, do your best to show in your answer that you understand what the question is saying, and do that explicitly. So rephrase. Referred back to the stimulus, and just make sure that your nice short bundled answer is cohesive. Easy, right?
No problem.
Okay, so we're talking about some strategies now. So we're going to be talking about ACE. Another one that has been mentioned is the CER. That's just like claim, evidence, reasoning. It's pretty much the same thing. Like the three letters mean virtually the same thing. But this is both of these strategies are good to just like really help students to know like what each sentence should be about. So let's see. So Chris says CER works a little bit better with SAQ than ACE. A lot of them don't understand the difference between the C and the E. Yeah, that's a good point. So they're both like really similar, and it kind of depends on how the kid like understands. I don't know, like how the kid thinks about their own writing, right? So for some kids, ACE works really well because the elaborate piece it fits really nicely, and we'll get into like how ACE works. And with the like CER, sometimes that just saying claim, evidence, reasoning works better, especially if the kids have been using that in like middle school before. So you kind of have to like adapt to the kids. And so this is one strategy, and we can talk about the CER one as well.
Yeah, I think I use CER in explaining ACE. So like a lot of my students, they learn about CER in their biology class, and they use that to respond to prompts in biology. And so saying ACE is just like CER helped them to transfer that experiential knowledge with CER over to ACE. And I think that ACE is really concise. And so I like that it's like 3 sentences. And so I think it does work really well for the SAQ.
For sure. All right, so let's cut through ACE. Heather, can you explain ACE? And just to answer someone else's question, yes, these slides will be available.
Yeah. Go ahead. So ACE is, again, directly related to the 3 things that are suggested that you do to answering an SAQ. So first off, they state their answer directly. You might think of this as like the thesis, or in CER as the claim. That's where they reword the prompt and just state the answer. Then in the C part, which is for Cite, they give specific historical evidence or facts, examples that support their answer to the prompt. So it can be as simple as stating an example, and we'll show you again in a minute, stating an example of the answer. And then E is just where they kind of wrap it all up, and they elaborate to show the connections between the example they gave and how that answers the question. Typically that can be done in 3 to 4 sentences, which is really nice because of the space constraint. And so typically students, when they do this and they do it well, they have more than enough to get the point for each part of the SAQ.
All right, so ACE. How would you say this is different than CER?
I don't know. That might be a good question for the people in the group. I haven't really used CER. I know that it exists because of the biology teachers I work with, but I haven't myself tried to use that as a strategy.
Okay, so we're going to show you some examples. So Albert asked...
Yeah, I was going to say, to clarify for Albert, the E is one sentence. So each part of ACE is 1 sentence. So the answer is 1 sentence, the evidence is 1 sentence, and the explain is 1 sentence. If you want to add an extra sentence in there somewhere to clarify something, that's why I say like the whole answer is 3 to 4 sentences.
Okay. And is it okay if they add a second sentence? They can't, I mean, they could add 4 sentences, but they don't necessarily need to. They can get the point in 3 or less. Yeah, it's all about the spacing, right? All right, so let's look at an example. So this is a world history example that was, I think it was on there a couple years ago, or last year maybe. So I kind of have it highlighted so that we have this set, and we're going to do some practice together too. So the question here was to identify and explain one way in which industrialization in the period 1750 to 1900 can be considered an economic turning point in global history. So this is the way that it's answered in this example. So the blue part would be just straight up answering the question. One way is in which industrialization can be considered an economic turning point is that mechanized production replaced traditional ways of creating consumer products. So in that sentence, all I'm doing is just answering. I'm just restating the question and just giving my actual answer. Then in the purple, I'm giving an example. So for example, the mechanization of textiles replaced the traditional hand-woven textile industry in India. So I'm citing a specific example from a place that I know that this affected their like economic production. And then in the yellow, I'm explaining that out. Machine-driven production was cheaper and faster, which made products more accessible to people. What do you think?
Right, so you have like the answer. You have the specific example by citing India, the hand-woven textile industry being replaced by machine, and then why machine-driven textiles replaced those things and how it is considered an economic turning point. So I think,
yeah. As a pause, looks like some people are having little issues with the speaker. Yeah, definitely use Chrome, and it should on the top. You might have to just turn on the mic if you're on a computer. There might be a little mic button. Okay, so for Cite example, the keywords here are India and textile. Exactly, right? So I'm not necessarily saying like a vocab word, but I'm specifically talking about an example in India. Shouldn't the explanation also expand on the effects of the developments? So I guess in this case, the question is just asking, identify and explain one way in which industrialization can be considered an economic turning point. So I don't need to go into the effects of that turning point, right?
I mean, if you have space and you want to, sure. Part of the problem with some of these questions is like a minimally accepted answer is maybe not the best answer, but it would still earn the point. And I think what we're trying to do here is also just kind of give strategies for earning these points easily. Obviously, if a student knows more and wants to expand, they have space, that's great. But as far as like a minimally accepted answer, I think this is a good example.
I think this would earn the point.
Oh, definitely.
So, I mean, the thing is, like, this is just part A, right? And I would say this is a 1 for part A. And then part B would ask something else. Because this is just straight up saying, why is industrialization a turning point? And this answer is saying it's a turning point because of
change the style of production.
Right. So it's changing things from hand-woven to machine-driven. So I think that's where the kids can get caught up too, is if they try to explain too much for each one. Mm-hmm. And then they end up having like too much stuff written for A, too much stuff written for B. Question was, can we talk about identify and explain versus just identify? Yeah. Heather, do you want to hit on that? Because that's a big thing in human geography.
Well, it's funny. I might be wrong because I haven't looked at all the SAQ options for worlds, but I feel like most of the examples from world, at least, which is my experience, have identify and explain. I have only seen identify in like human geography FRQ questions. So I'm actually not familiar with a question saying just identify. I would say that if it does just say identify, that you just identify. But to be safe, regardless of whether it says identify, College Board decides they're looking for something else.
So essentially what I'm doing is identifying it looks like your video just cut out, where you're identifying the change, the turning point as the switch from hand-woven to mechanization, and then you're explaining that through the fact that it's cheaper and faster. That would be enough for that.
Does that answer the question about identify versus explain? I want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, explaining is asking you to justify your answer. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Identify what is the change. Explain how was it a change. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. And so, yeah, so the just straight up identify, that comes up in other social science exams, but not really the history ones. Okay, so let's do some examples. So we're going to post, this is like part B of, this is a different question, but that's okay. So this is part B, and I'm going to actually put up, a Google Doc. And so for some of you guys want to just write some examples, we're going to just kind of do some live grading on this. So This one is looking at this text that was essentially talking about human land use. And so they're talking about the fact that like more humans is going to put more pressure on the land, and that's going to change the vegetation. And so the question here is identify and explain one historically specific example from the period before 1450 in which humans interacted with the environment in ways similar to those described in the passage. So if anyone's willing to just test it out and write us a response, I'll copy some of them over and we'll grade them together. And yeah, this will be fun. And then let me check out these questions that were here. Question about labeling. I've been to a few APSIs where the presenter has said that, well, yes, that is easier. Ooh. Yeah, so Chris is talking about labeling A, B, and C. I would suggest labeling.
It's just, I mean, they're still going to get points. Like, even if they label A as B and they answer, at least in my experience as a reader for the SAQs 2 years ago, even if a student labeled it B, for example, but in their answer, they didn't really answer B, but they did A, and if they hadn't already gotten credit for A, then they would have gotten a point, even if it's mislabeled. So that's not going to hurt students. And it just makes it so much easier for the reader and also the student to make sure that they've answered all parts. Because sometimes, you know, students get distracted and they'll answer the first part and write a lot and kind of forget about some of the other parts of the questions. So I just think it's a safer bet.
Yeah.
That's why I have
Okay, so if anyone wants to answer this question and we can do some grading, you can just type your answer in the chat and I'll push it over onto the Google Doc. So the Google Doc doesn't get too crazy. But I'll also share the Google Doc with you guys later. All right, so some examples are, let's see. So what kinds of things could we talk about in this prompt? What are some ways that humans interacted with the environment before 1450 that was essentially like harming the environment? Neolithic revolution, that's one that you could talk about, right? So you could say, right, one example is the Neolithic revolution when humans first started to farm. For example, slash and burn, I don't know, I'm trying to like do this off the cuff. So what would you write on this, Heather?
I think I would go with slash and burn,
Okay.
or even terracing. I think that's a good example too. And then describe, so you'd identify slash and burn as a practice before 1450 that humans were interacting with the environment in a similar way in the passage. And then your evidence would be, I guess, just explaining what slash and burn did to the environment and comparing it to what's in the passage. And then your explain would be to explain how that is an example.
All right. Can't come up with a good answer. That's okay.
Yeah,
it's fine. We're going to adapt. It's totally cool. This is actually something I do with students. So when your students sign up for Fiveable, this is something I'll do with them is I'll sort of take an answer that they write, ask them to like send me stuff and grade it on the fly.
And then
it's okay.
In response to Cheryl, why are they asking about 1450 to 1750 and then asking for a pre-example? This is only one part of a 3-part SAQ. So in the other 2 parts, they may ask about within the time period given, 1450 to 1750, but they want to test that they know more than just that. So that's why they ask about pre, and then another part of this question would ask about 1450 to 1750.
Yeah, I think part A was specifically about 1450 to 1750. Part B was before 1450, and part C, I think, was after 1750. So they're just trying to like cut out a lot of things. All right, so we have one brave person here. The Mayan civilization focused on corn production in the late 10th century. Their deforestation techniques led to increased food production and overpopulation, which destroyed their ecosystem of the Yucatan Peninsula. I mean, yeah. Right? And so I think you could add one last sentence there. And that would just kind of wrap it up, right?
Well, I think they also somewhere need to make a connection to the passage, right? So like one of the things about the stimulus is when given, you have to make it explicit that you're using that stimulus as part of your answer. So I think that those examples would be great. So that would be like the A and the C of ACE. And then maybe your expand is, again, to just elaborate on how that is connected to what's in the passage.
Okay, so one more sentence for crystals that would be like in the middle almost. You could put a sentence in the middle that's like, you know, as, I don't know, you could say like increased food production, like put pressure on the land, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so it looks like there's a little bit of confusion over ACE and A, B, and C. Yeah, there's a lot of letters going on.
Too many letters.
So just to clarify, so with the short answer questions, let's say we're looking at question 1. That would be A, B, and C. Each part A, B, and C would have 3 sentences each, right? And part A would have 3 sentences for ACE, part B would have 3 sentences for ACE, and part C would have 3 sentences for ACE. Let me actually share with you one of the things that's up on the site, on the Summit site, is sample essays. And so we've got, I have a bunch of sample short answer questions. Let me just actually share that and show you what a full response would look like.
And also, I think Jasmine's comment about the E of ACE and the R of CER being where you connect to the passage is perfectly fine. You don't need to do it in every part because it's all the same answer. It's just that you want to make sure that somewhere in your response to this part of the question that you identify something about the stimulus. So it can happen anywhere.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so let me make this bigger. Can you see that, Heather?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so you have all of this document is uploaded on the site. And so here's the example. This was on this year's short answer questions. So this first one looked at like mass murder in democratic versus totalitarian societies. And so we have parts A, B, and C. And in each one, there's like, this would be A for ACE. This would be C. And this would be E. Right. So just to like, you know, practice with this one. Confusing with all the same colors. Okay, so in this case, it says identify one historical example of mass violence that was committed by a totalitarian state in the 20th century that would support Rummel's argument. So Rummel's argument in the passage basically says the more power a government has, the more violence they can commit. The more that power is checked and balanced, the less they will harm others. And so in this one, I'm giving an example of mass violence committed by a totalitarian state. So one example of mass murder committed by a totalitarian state in the 20th century was the Holocaust. Nazi Germany was an authoritarian fascist regime that carried out the deaths of 11 million targeted people. The totalitarian dictatorship under Hitler allowed them to carry out genocide through laws, deportations, and mass extermination camps. So something like that.
Well, this is a good example of one that says identify and it doesn't say explain. And so I wonder, I noticed at least one person read this question this year. Was there any like advice given as to what the minimally accepted answer would be? Could you just say Nazi Germany. I wouldn't advise my kids to do that just because I think that that's not enough. But I wonder.
The bar was very low. If they mentioned Holocaust, yes, Nazi Germany worked. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, again, I can see why kids would, yeah.
Well, and I also just think that there's like, what's minimally accepted at the read isn't necessarily how we want to teach kids to answer these questions, right? So I think, yeah, exactly like Tom, I always tell them it's better to do more than less. So this is still a good way to get kids to just elaborate on the answer. Even if they know it's Nazi Germany, okay, why is it Nazi Germany?
Yeah. Yeah, and Crystal, to your point, you're tougher on your kids than the exam readers are. That's 100% where things are, right? And and honestly, sometimes I'm even open with my students about that, of like, by the end of the year, you know? So it's like, you hold the bar higher. You know that when we talk about the later essays, that like the evidence bar, for example, like you're going to require more to give them that point. You're going to require more explanation. Like it's a lot easier for you to say, I'm not going to give you this point yet until you give me more, than to wait and let the exam reader do that. Right. Right. Yeah. Over prepare them. And that way, when they go and take the exam, then they're going to, yeah, they're gonna be like, that was easy. There's no problem. You were much harder on us. Open day one, telling them I will be harder and require more from you than could happen at the AP read. Yep. Yeah. Right. You can get them on your side too, right? It's like you and your students against the exam, right? So it's like you're working to help them get to a point where they know what they're doing. And like, you're trying to like figure out all the pieces that are going to happen at the read, and you're figuring them out with them. So it's really like, that's part of a culture building thing.
And these are transferable to the other parts of the exam.
For sure. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to the slide. So let's talk about, so if you have more questions about just like, what exactly does the short answer question look like? How do you get the point? You can keep asking those questions. But let's talk more about actually teaching this. What does it look like in the classroom? So, you've got all year, like where are some great places that you can teach the short answers, practice the short answers, and just really like hit on some of these skills? So go ahead, Heather, maybe you can explain this.
Yeah, I mean, I just put together some ideas for things that I've done or thought about doing. So last year I used SAQ practice as part of my do nows. And so you could also use them as exit tickets if you've taught material that day and you want to close with some sort of assessment using an SAQ. I think that's really useful. So the pro is that you have this embedded practice. So I think my kids wrote at least one SAQ a week, sometimes two. And I think that was really useful for them. They did score above the goal mean on those sections. So they got a lot of practice. The con is that it takes at least 15 to 20 minutes to answer and go over the questions. So if you have shorter periods, you don't have enough time, that might be difficult to get that done more than once a week. But I think dedicating at least one per week or one every 2 weeks is really useful. Assessments, I think a lot of teachers use SAQs in their assessments. You always want to make sure that they're timed because students can go over a lot. So I start by giving them like 15 minutes to when they first get an SAQ, and then slowly, move that time down. Pros to that is that it's an authentic assessment. It's going to mirror actual test conditions. They're going to be used to that timing. It's also incentivized because they know you're grading it for a test grade. The con is that you have to grade them. And it also might be a little like anxiety producing for students because it's on a test. So I would try to like mix sort of the low bar and the high anxiety testing or examples with them so that they get used to it and then don't get stressed about it when it's on a test. And then kids can work together on SAQs, whether that's you give a group an SAQ to answer and they have to do it together, or you have them write their own. That's kind of a fun challenge sometimes, is having them work in pairs or small groups to create their own SAQ, have them use the language from College Board, have them create an answer key, and then you can even, have groups trade and write and grade each other's. questions. So I think that's really good experience for them to get better familiar with how SAQs are graded, and then just, the low stakes practice with their peers. Con, unless you have group work norms set up already, one kid might like take over writing that, and the other kids would be able to easily disengage. But I think, again, if you've put in place group work norms and have practiced that, then that could be a fun activity.
Yeah, for sure. I really like the like do now's exit ticket type, and someone even said too, like you could just give them part A of an SAQ.
I do that frequently. Yeah,
right.
Do that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's super smart because you can practice the whole process of a short answer question in just 3 sentences, in just that first part. And so if you start your class with an example, and you could even take 3 days to do a full short answer question, right? And just do part A on Monday, part B on Tuesday, part C on Wednesday, whatever comes after Tuesday.
I've also put all parts on there and then had students like choose A, B, or C, just again for the time, because I know a lot of teachers are concerned with time. And so just, like you said, you could just do one part and have the students choose which one part they want to practice.
Yeah. And I feel like kids tend to like feel better about the short answer questions than the longer essays. For sure. And also like the prompts of the short answer questions are oftentimes really similar to long essay questions and require similar skills. And so you can end up practicing 2 things at once. Do now exit tickets. Do you give individual feedback and group feedback? So you could do a couple different ways. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, I mean, both. If it's on a do now, I will do I'll go over the question in class and give the answers. And then the way that I grade my do now is I only grade 1 a week. So I might pick that to grade. And if the SAQ is what I've picked to grade that week for their do nows, then yes, I would give individualized feedback. But generally it takes place whole group.
Yeah.
Because the feedback's usually pretty straightforward. It's either you answered it or you didn't,
Yeah. And to Jasmine's point, Google Classroom makes it really easy too. So if you do have access to technology, the kids can write their response and submit it. And you could even project a bunch of them and just pick a few to grade, or have them grade each other's, or just like have them comment on each other's things. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways you can do it if you have good access to technology. If not, they're handwriting and you pick 1 a week. Do you guys have any other suggestions of ways that you teach short answers in the classroom? So let's see, build them into lectures immediately after we review related content so that they get practice. That's awesome. So you'll lecture a few slides of content and then put up a short answer type question and immediately practice that. And that would be really good for them to even have in their notes, right? Because then when they go back, they could review content and then see an example question that could be asked about that content. Grade scope. I don't know what grade scope is. That sounds cool though. Google Classroom. Google Classroom doesn't mimic test conditions. Do you think that using on assessment is sufficient practice for handwriting? It's a good question. So I think it's a fine line between, obviously the exam is handwritten, and so you do want to have them practice that as much as possible because, especially writing in pen, like kids, that freaks them out. However, in like the day-to-day, the technology gives you more access to give more kids feedback quickly and to have them give each other feedback. And so personally, I think it's fine to use a mixture of both because they are beneficial for different ways. Let's see.
I actually didn't use typing responses at all last year. Everything they did was handwritten. But I think, as someone mentioned, that a combination of those 2 things, depending on how much access you have to technology, is fine. Sometimes if you want it to be faster, you can do it on the computer easier. But, if you only do computer, then they're not getting the test conditions. So I think a combination of both is nice.
Yeah, I would say for assessments, like for, just straight up tests or quizzes, have them handwrite it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that is going to be more what the exam conditions will be. But for just like practice, do nows, group work, things like that, then definitely build in technology if you have it and if it will make your life easier or better. Yeah, that's what I would suggest. All right, so I was figuring I would still choose more handwriting. Yeah. I mean, having technology can make it really great. You can do a lot of cool stuff with that. But yeah. All right, so at this point, we're kind of open now to just any other questions that you guys have. We've kind of gone through everything that we had. There are uploaded examples. They're full examples from 2018 exams for AP US, AP World, and AP European History. So you can check out those on the Summit site. Those will just be, how do you get to the examples? So on summit.fiveable.me/teach. I'll put the link in here. Yeah, oh, thank you. You beat me. Will you share the Summit site link? Yep, there it is. So if you just go down to the bottom, all 3 exams are uploaded. There's just Google Drive folders. And so inside each of those, there are example short answer questions. So you can see more examples of what this whole thing looks like. And you can see it for every subject. And even if you teach world, it's worth it to go check out US or Euro. It's the same format. All these exams are the exact same. So it just gives you more to base off of. And I definitely recommend sharing examples with students too. And writing your own. So like when you give students a test for a short answer question, write one with them and share it with them. And it's okay if it's not perfect, right? Like it's like part of a good process with them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna stick around for questions. I'm gonna just post a quick little poll again just to see what your experience was like here. And so we'll stick around for a little while and take some questions. Other than that, this is the short answer question session, and we'll be back in a little over an hour with DBQs. So, all right, anything else you wanted to add, Heather?
No, I think I was just going to help answer any of the questions. One about resources. I try to pull SAQs from like test prep books that are available. I use AMSCO as my primary text, and even though their questions aren't always the greatest, there are a lot of them for each, at least 1 or 2 for each chapter. So that's helpful for practicing. And then just any other prep book. Also, I steal questions from there.
Okay. I'm going to hide this. All right. So a quick little poll just to see how everyone's feeling. Helpful. Okay. And so, so if someone else is having any trouble with the site, we're having a little bit of tech issues today, but we're working on it. So it's fixed? Okay. So it should be good. Okay. Yeah. So if let's see. Any other questions that you have about short answer questions as you're planning your year, send them our way. We're going to be live more throughout the year for all of you so that you have more support with short answer questions. So, when we're in the trenches of October and we're like, I just don't understand this thing and the kids aren't getting it, we'll be able to work together to help each other out through that. The AP Teacher Community Online does this all the time. You can post anything there and other teachers will respond, grading your response. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know that part of this summit, Amanda, includes support throughout the year for teachers. And so just to answer some questions, like I am happy to help support teachers if you have anything you want read or graded. I can use my experience to help with that as well.
Awesome. And then the Facebook page. Yeah, there's a Facebook group for AP World teachers that has been really helpful as well. There's over like 5,000 teachers in there. So definitely request.
If you're not already joined there, definitely
join. Yeah. Just make sure you follow the directions because they won't include you. They won't add you if you don't have the right things in there. Yeah. The AP World Facebook link. I'm not even sure. If you just search AP World Teachers on Facebook, it'll come up.
Yeah.
NA Push, NAP Euro. Yep, there are Facebook groups for all three. Facebook groups are hopping for AP teachers. They're just big. For AP Euro, I use Mastering the Essay. Oh, that's cool.
How much time per week do I spend on SAQs? As I said before, and this is in response to Marty's question. Last year I did 2 SAQs per week. So I would say I spent 35 minutes a week on SAQs. And students reported that was really helpful because they weren't like surprised by any questions they saw on the test. And a lot of the questions that we had gone over, very similar type questions appeared on the exam. And so I know like we did one SAQ about the effects of industrialization, and we talked about trains and railroads. And so it was really funny when they wrote the DBQ, a lot of them were like, we had that discussion with the SAQ that we did. So you'll find that there's a lot of overlap. So if you cover enough SAQs, that is also going to leak into what they write about for the LEQ and the DBQ as well.
For sure. Someone else said to grading for credit versus grading for practice. I would always grade them. I don't know. I would try to grade for credit as much as possible.
Yeah. Just
to like put more emphasis on it.
Or have some sort of like cycling where you're doing a lot of practice and then grading like every, 2 or 3 times they write one.
Right.
And then, more in the beginning of the year versus the end of the year, definitely.
Or having ways for them to like rewrite one. So if you're grading it for credit, if you're always grading it for credit, if you have a system where they can rewrite a short answer question that they didn't earn a lot of points on, then that's good for them. Will these slides be available? Yes. So as soon as I end this session, I'll be downloading the video, putting up the slides on the site so that you can access everything that we talked about here. And if you came in late or you want to rewatch this session, everything will be uploaded onto the site. So you'll be able to see it all. All right, so I'm going to kind of wrap it up there. I'm also going to add a forum section on that page so that you can ask us more questions there as well. And we'll make sure to like jump in and, help you out where we need to. And so moving forward, so we're in an hour and 10 minutes, we're going to be live again for the document-based question. And then tomorrow we've got 3 sessions. And so can I share how many people participate in this SAQ? Yeah, there are about 75 people in this session at its like peak, and there's over 200 signed up for the summit. So each one will be about the same, and a couple more have signed up today. So yeah, this is a great group of teachers. I'm excited to be working with you guys the rest of the year and with your students too. So we'll be sharing more information about that later next week about students. All right, so thank you guys so much. Thank you, Heather, for sharing all your tips and tricks for short answer questions.
Anytime.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, so all this stuff will be posted up soon, and I'll see you guys in a little while for the document-based question. Woo! Bye.